His Holiness stopped teaching me, but for the sake of publication, the Great Exposition of Secret Mantra at Yoga Tantra, because he did not feel competent, ready to give the type of commentary he wanted to be able to give, and went on to the stage of generation. And then over a period of time consulted with a number of scholars and turned to written texts on Yoga Tantra and put together a competent, I'm using the word competent, yes, a competent commentary. And he had his office call me from Virginia to a public teaching in which he gave his commentary on, it must have been the whole of the Great Exposition of Secret Mantra, but in that gave this new, competent commentary on Yoga Tantra. That was what I understood I was being called for. Why especially? I was being called to this public teaching. And in the meantime, I had become, shall I say, even obsessed with Tsong-kha-pa's The Essence of Eloquence. Why? Because while I was staying at Sharjah in South India, Ladi Rinpoche told me that His Holiness was likely coming to Ganden to teach the essence of eloquence. And he gave me the library name of this, a booklet, a Western book type version of the essence of eloquence. It's called the Codex in library language. Our librarian taught me that. And I started reading it, couldn't make heads nor tails of it. So I figured the way I start understanding things is to translate it. So I started translating it while lying down on my bed in the then guest house of Sharjah. This is way back. And with my cassette tape recorder on my chest, and began translating. And interestingly enough, there was somebody shouting Lekshe Nyingpo from memory at night. And after a while I thought, oh, that's Lekshe Nyingpo. It was just sort of curious. The guest house at that point was on the boundary line between Jiangxi and Sharjah. And I went through the whole text. And I don't know how long that took me. I certainly didn't do all of it, but I just kept at all of it while I was at Sharjah and moved on to Gomang eventually as planned, and went on to Dharamsala, and just went on and on and on, and recorded it, and my students typed it all out. And I'm still working on the later chapters. I had no intention at all of translating it, but that's how I happened to do it. So I had, when I came to working on the stage of generation stage chapter, I was so disappointed in my inability to handle the quotations that I just kept working on the essence of eloquence, because there are so many commentaries, and also began teaching the essence of eloquence. And many years later, decades later, His Holiness asked me why I dropped that translation, because he specifically had asked me to translate the Great Exposition of Secret Mantra. I mean, he didn't say that, but he asked me. And I said I couldn't handle the quotations. And I don't know whether he said under his breath something like, well, we could have handled that. In the meantime, to work on Yoga Tantra, I worked with for the mudras, the abbot of Namgyal Tratsang, and he would have been great to work with on that, or I don't know who His Holiness was thinking of, because I had taken all of my questions to His Holiness on, I didn't work with somebody else. I worked with His Holiness. I mean, that was the bargain I drove. But I learned early on, having many plans, I'm reflecting on that this morning. The number, I cut out many plans and settled on a few things. And now I have, one of my teachers wants me to do one thing, one teacher, the other teacher wants me to do something quite different. But I'm obstinate enough to continue doing what I'm doing, what I'm already committed to. Nagarjuna has a statement in his Sherab Dombo. A smart person doesn't promise to do many things. So that's how I fake being smart. I try not to promise doing many things. So that takes the first 15 minutes. Measure of having realized the profound dependent arising in the manner of the dawning, a composite of the two. So, composite of the two, in Tsong-kha-pa says immediately, when without alternation and simultaneously. So simultaneously, does simultaneously really mean at the same time? I remember Georges Dreyfus from Switzerland, the first white guy to get a geisha degree. And he posed this question. I said, come on, attack me. We were alone somewhere. And I said, come on, attack me. And he struck a formal posture and threw this one at me. And I understood quite thoroughly what he said and didn't give him an answer. Yeah. simultaneously from only seeing dependent arising. Now this is, in preparation for today, which I began a week ago, thinking that we were meeting last Tuesday. So I got to prepare 20 pages, which is very helpful. And I want to recommend reading all the way through up to the place where the issues begin to be discussed. And reading these 20 pages because finally, at least for me, things are beginning to sink in. Getting an overread on them, a quick overread and another overread and another overread. The issues being, we're getting two things in mind, and they're very simple. They're very simple. And there's a whole lot of verbiage around them, but the two things are that whatever is a dependent arising doesn't inherently exist. This is a dependent arising. Whatever is a dependent arising doesn't inherently exist. Doesn't exist in and of itself. And sometimes when you deal with a whole lot of verbiage, you get sick of the verbiage. But if you struggle through the verbiage, after a while you begin realizing, that's all you're dealing with. And by struggling with the verbiage, you can get mired down in the verbiage and just get sick and want to go throw up. Or by struggling with it, you can, this becomes your figuring out only these two. It's a way to get used to these two. The verbiage can get overpowering, can get lost in it. But if you struggle with it, I used to wrestle. But no matter how much you learn about wrestling, this kind of hold, that kind of hold, this and that, you end up on the mat with one other person. There's two people. The other one's taking down the other person, and then one is trying to pin the other person. It gets very simple. That's on my mind, because when I was preparing for this, I actually didn't think of it in terms of two people wrestling. When I was preparing for this a week ago, when I was reading along, it was as if the material I was reading threw me down. Not like wrestling. I didn't think of wrestling until today. The material knocked me down. What I was reflecting on took me by my clothing and forced me straight down on the floor. In other words, removed all pride, removed all feeling that I knew what was going on, and and reduced me to to lying with my face down, if I had any face anymore. So I guess that made, in this case, since there were two things, I thought of the metaphor of wrestling, where you learn a whole lot. You learn a whole lot, even names of this hold and that hold, and you learn how to do this and you learn how to do that. But actually, I was just reading of how to make a case, and Neil Katyal said, you don't take your notes. If you want to make a case before the Supreme Court, you don't pick up your notes. You speak straight out to the people you are speaking to. You speak straight out and you look at them. Oh, yeah. Anyway, metaphors. So, from only seeing dependent arising is non-delusive. Betsy, I brought up this question of the Tibetan word is milua, non-delusive, ineluctable. Geshe Wangyal's term, infallible. And she said she continued to like the original word that we've developed in Virginia, incontrovertible. Incontrovertible. From only seeing dependent arising in the stanza we were looking at before, cause and effect as incontrovertible. That's the way that they're going to be. There's no way of getting around it. Dependent arising. So that's why I was wording everything as a dependent arising. I was contemplating this morning. Part of education in, I don't know as it's higher circles, but I suppose in universities nowadays it's drummed into you. There might be world systems in which everything wouldn't be a dependent rising. That we need to open up our minds. We can't lay over a certain perspective on that there would be some other world system in which the things wouldn't be dependent arisings. They would be, as one of my editors changed dependent arising to independent arising. He's a great editor, tremendous editor. He had to be educated. Fortunately, it was in the contract that I was the final decider of what was published. Otherwise, it would have gone in as independent arising. And I would have read the book later as with His Holiness saying, blah, blah, independent arising. He had to be educated. And then it got to the point where his changes were 98, 99% correct. So, are we bold enough to make the decision that with the first way I put it, which isn't the right way, but for what we're doing at the moment, which actually is whatever is dependent arising is not inherently existent, which is even bolder. But whatever exists is a dependent arising, depends on its parts. If it's impermanent, it depends on causes. Are we bold enough? We're taught not to be bold. I think it may come from the scariness of hydrogen bombs and whatever else may be discovered that will rip apart the entire world as we know it. Whatever science will discover. And yes, that is science knowledge, real knowledge. But that scared the shit out of everybody. The bombs. Where I learned that was a TV series, which had a lot of magic in it. It was called Carvanel. Has anyone seen that? Carvanel, which had a lot of magic in it. But people there wasn't any room for magic anymore because science in its realm had captured everybody's mind. As if there wasn't anything left but the realm of science. That science had proved that only that realm existed, which is, even within science nowadays, that's not true. Science nowadays doesn't have the realm of everything. Current science. Current science is not that stupid. Current science is really out there and wild. It's really, even I know that. Who knows not much science? Very little. But when you read, even in my day, were some Russian scientists who were promoting that the moon was the body of a sentient being that had died. It's in the New York Times. Pretty wild. Sounds like Tibetans, but it wasn't Tibetans. It was some good Russian scientists. Anyway, from only seeing dependent arising is non-delusive. Again, Tsong-kha-pa is saying dependent arising. And ascertaining consciousness entirely destroys the mode of apprehension of objects as inherently existent. That time is completion of analysis of the view. So George, he had long-term built up a debate around this. From reflecting most likely on the impossibility of this actually occurring, or the difficulty of positing that this understanding, this ascertainment could be simultaneous. So, you've read the Tan-Dar-Lha-Ram-Pa's rewording of this. That time, or that point, that time, he says, it's that time, the word, it's time in Tibetan, is the measure of this person's having completed an analysis of the view. And we have many chapters in this book of really the tremendous Tibetan scholars speaking about when this time is. Then we have another version, another being not that one. If you know how the extreme of existence is avoided by appearances, Well, appearance is what usually keeps us away from the extreme of non-existence. But here, you know appearances so well that it keeps you from the extreme of existence. You know, Tsong-kha-pa turns it around. Instead of keeping you from the extreme of non-existence, of nihilism. And the extreme of non-existence, of nihilism, is avoided by emptiness. And emptiness dawns as cause. That means emptiness as like a cause. Things appearing like from emptiness. This is, emptiness is the Buddha nature. Emptiness is the cause, the element. Emptiness is like an element because here, now, number one, this is not talking about how, not just talking about how contemplation on emptiness serves as the cause of a superior's marvelous qualities over the 10 bodhisattva grounds. It's not just talking about that. But over the 10 bodhisattva grounds, emptiness is called the Buddha nature because contemplation on it, that means this consciousness that contemplates it, serves as a cause generating the exalted qualities of a bodhisattva. And that's Chandrakirti's layout of the 10 bodhisattva grounds explains the qualities that come from over and over directly contemplating emptiness. So emptiness is the Dharma, in Sanskrit, Dharma Dhatu, element of dharmas, element of qualities, the bodhisattva's marvelous qualities. In Tibetan, Churki Ying. Ying is one of the meanings of Ying is element. Dharma means qualities, dharmas, qualities here. Dharma has many meanings. So the element of the bodhisattva's qualities, high qualities. And Chandrakirti beautifully lays out the qualities that come from a bodhisattva's contemplation, non-dual contemplation of emptiness. Increasing qualities. So I'm teasing in a way. A lot of us like to repeat the word Dharma Dhatu. Not so much do people like to repeat the word Churki Ying, but as if this were a magical word. But Dharma Dhatu, people love to repeat it without reflecting on its meaning. Ngawang Belden has this, just is very clear, and it's built, as I remember, on Maitreya's. One of Maitreya's texts, he has his quote. in Tibetan, Kyurla Mikne Gombe Pakpe Chur Gebena Churki Ying. It's called Dharma Dhatu, element of qualities, because by taking cognizance of it, apprehending it, taking cognizance of it, and meditating on it, a superior's the attributes of a superior are generated. Therefore, it's called the element of qualities. And even, those who like to repeat the word, all of us, I'm including myself, like to repeat the word Dharma Dhatu, and we're even put off by calling it or element of attributes, or element of qualities, element of attributes, sort of like, piercing the inflated bubble of our love of repeating Dharma Dhatu, as if that has itself has a marvel. Like many of the words we love to repeat. With great attachment, without reflecting on their meaning. But the Kyurla Mikne Gombe Pakpe Chur Gebe Na Churki Ying, for those who. And then, that's why I repeat that. That's why I memorize that. Okay.
Jeffrey, may I just ask a short question about
Please.
the topic? Just the relationship between, because I notice now that Dhatu sometimes becomes yin, but sometimes it becomes hum. So the relationship between hum and yin, could you mention what that is? Just like the 12 elements, the 12 Dhatu we call
Yeah.
18.
Churki Kam. I think it's the same in this sense. Constituent. In that sense, constituent. It's the constituent that gives rise to. Even though among the 12 constituents, I think a good translation for Churki Kam is constituent. So it's the basic constituent of the attributes. That's good, thanks. And emptiness, as our emptiness itself, sometimes Churki Kam is used for emptiness. The basic constituent of the attributes is just boiled down. I think my mind is getting a little whirly at this point. Churki Ying, Churki Kam. Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about, yes. It finally made the connection. I was going whirly, and it was looking for the connection. That's what we're already talking about. Yeah. So emptiness, you see, is then cause. Emptiness is being called the cause, and thus the constituent. The my mind is waking up, or it's slowing down. I should switch my cups from the coffee to the water. Emptiness is the cause. Emptiness is the basic constituent. I'll add basic to that. Basic constituent. Emptiness is the element. And I'll add basic to my translation, I think, quite often. Basic element. Why? Because element is used for the 4 elements, 6 constituents. And conventionalities, its effects. So not the usual meaning of the term effects. You will not be captivated by extreme views. So appearances is Tan-Dar-Lha-Ram-Pa glosses as explains, modifies in a sense as dependent arising. I think why? Because emptiness appears. But when in English, it's easy to say appearances, although there are many emptinesses, so they're all appearances in one way. And non-existence is qualified as utter non-existence. Now the word in the next one, conventional phenomena being manifestations. This word in Tibetan is namgyur, and this is the word that Sankhya's use as manifestations. Manifestations of the nature. And Buddhists liberally dip into, Buddhism being Indian, uses words that are drawn from Sankhya with its own meaning. And my mind jumps ahead in highest yoga tantra. How is manifestations namgyur used? It is. And even the Sanskrit term prakriti, rangshin, is used. And in order for us to felicity finish on time, the general meaning of those, I won't rack my mind. I won't say rack my brain, you see. But brain and mind using brain. Good day.